Hello and welcome. So my camera decided not to work today, so we're going to focus on the code and that stuff because it's what we're here for at the end of the day, right? So today we're going to walk through some domain-driven design in Laravel. So last time we started working on our CRM and we've got these entities so far. We've got a user, contact, company, interaction, and a note. So when working with DDD, the first thing that you need to think about doing is understanding your boundaries. So what we've got here is two main boundaries. So I'm just going to make that see through there, and we're going to send that to the backwards. Send it to back. So we've got these two are one boundary, and that is our network. So if we just add a quick note here, we can say that this is our network. I'm going to see if I can zoom in a little bit. Here we go. Let's just zoom in a little. So this is like our network domain. It's anything to do with our professional network that we're growing, that we're working with. So then that makes this one here. Let's make sure we send that to the back. This one here is then our communication domain. Let's just put that there. And we're just going to quickly just select that, and we are going to align to the bottom. Ooh, no, not that. Here we go. So we've got these two main domains here. Now the user is only really attachable to our application, so we don't need to worry too much about that. But these two parts here are where we need to focus. Hey Rob, hey everybody, thank you for joining. I'll be switching between screens just because actually if I do that, it'll make it a little bit easier. So there we go. We've got our two main domains. Our network domain and our communication domain. So when it comes to Laravel, we are used to seeing a structure very similar to this, where all of our code lives within this area here. However, what we want to do is create a new namespace. So we're going to have a domains namespace, and that is going to live within source domains. Now, if we just create that directory, we can then compose a grumpy autoloader, meaning that we can then recreate it. So we're going to have these two main domains. Let me just make my text a little bit bigger. Here we go. So we're going to have our network domain, and we're going to have our communication domain. So there are two main domains, two main things that we need to focus on. So it occurs to me after I read the title, can we use DDD in Laravel creating two directories? I suppose you could do, but that might be a bit of a pain. So let's do that arc. So when it comes to domains, they contain a few things. We've got aggregates, repositories, services, events, value objects, and entities. Now, let's just go through these. So an aggregate clusters are basically clusters of related objects treated as a single unit. Then we've got our repositories, and that handles the retrieval and persistence of aggregates. Our service handles a complex business logic that does not fit into any entities or value objects. Events are things that happen within the domain that other parts of the application might be interested in. You probably know that one already. Then we've got value objects, which are immutable objects that contain additional functionality. An entity is basically just a distinct identity. So what we want to do is create these directories. So we're going to have aggregates, repositories, services, events, value objects, and entities all within each domain. So let's start. We're going to have aggregates. Repositories. Then we will have our services. We'll have some entities. We're going to create some events. What am I missing? Value objects. So value object services. Let's just double check. I believe that should be it. It is. So we can grab those and we're just going to drop them in there as well. And we will start with our network here. Let's double check the chat. Are we all good? Yes, we are. So what we want to focus on here is going to be the first step. Let's look at repositories. So we're going to want to have a way to interact with the company and the contact from our repositories here. So we will have a contact repository as well as company repository. So there are two repositories. They will interact with the database and get what we need, basically. So these are typically bound to some form of interface. So what we need to do is create a way to bind those. If we come back over to here, the way that I like to do it is to create an infrastructure namespace under source infrastructure. So within infrastructure, I can then have a new directory for repositories. And what I would do is create a repository interface. Now, this is then going to implement that, as will this one here. So let's just close that off. So this interface, what are we going to have? We're going to want to be able to say get all. We're going to want to find. I love this JetBrains AI stuff, by the way. It just kind of, it guesses what I'm going to want to do. So, okay, create, update. Probably going to want to delete. And the other thing that we might want to do is public function query, and this is going to return an eloquent builder. So this is going to want to have some form of database injected into it. So we're going to want to have the database manager available. That query there probably could be injected instead. So we would also have a query injected like that. So let's just stub those methods out, and we're going to stub those methods out as well. So the contact, what we're going to want to do is public function construct we're going to have a private read-only database manager as database, and we're going to have a private read-only builder as query. And we can pretty much replicate that to there. We can make both of these read-only. Let's just clean that up. I hate it that it does that. I wonder if there's a setting I can use. Right, so there we go. So contact repository. We want to get all contacts at this point. So we are going to say that our contacts at this point are going to be this query get. Now, when we say all, we also want to make sure we're only getting specific ones. What I'll actually do as well is for this one, we are just going to, we're not going to do that, that's for sure. So we will return this query find or fail. The ID is the ID passed in. We're going to return an array there shortly. So let's just return an empty array for now, because we're going to want to build up to that. Create, return this database. We're going to make sure that we always use a transaction. We're going to make sure that we always attempt it 3 times at a worst case scenario. So then callback can then be this query create. And then the attributes, something that we need to work on. So we're going to have that entity. We're going to have like an entity to array, which we will work on shortly. So that will error for now. And over here, you can then do a return this database transaction. It's got the $sign. There we go. So again, attempt 3 times, and the callback is going to be a function that then says this query where the column is ID, operator is going to be equals, and the value is going to be entity ID. Then we will update. The values is going to be the entity to array. So what I think maybe we want to do here is have a string ID passed in. And have that like that. So let's just, on the update, we will do that. That's fine. Let's avoid return. Anything else? So then down here on the delete, what we're going to want to do is do this database transaction again, attempts 3, callback is going to be delete. So we can just pass through the ID there. So we can say column E operators equals value ID. we can then replicate that across to here. So this, I don't even know what theme I'm using right now because it's not my usual one, if I'm honest. It is not my usual. So we can find. So the way I like to call these is like browse, read, edit, add, and delete. So the bread approach. So in these here, what I'm just going to do is just delete all of those and add the method stubs. Is there anything in particular here that could not be extracted other than this part? I suppose this could be, for now, we're just going to return this query get. This is going to return an array of eloquent objects, and we're going to worry about that a little bit later. So a lot of this is kind of repeatable. So we could probably create a abstract repository that implements this repository interface. If I just literally grab all of these, this repository is going to do all of that. Can't see any problems right now. Then all of this can be deleted. Instead of implementing that, we're going to extend the repository. So extends to repository. Let me just do a quick composer dump. It's not finding it. Rewatch it tonight. Am I over drying? Probably. I probably am. Implement that. So then I can just get this, remove that part and that part. There we go. So then what we're going to do is on our company as well. It is completely over-dried. Cat is right, but I'm trying to explain a concept. So it is acceptable in my eyes anyway. So we've got our two different repositories, and what we can do is if we need to do anything specific to override the base repository, we add that within here. So there is that. Then down in here, we've got our repositories. So then we're going to have our contact service. And this contact service is going to have a couple of things injected into it as well. So we're going to have that contact repository as a repository. And then we're going to start working with that. So public function, we're going to get all. So we can say that our contacts is that. And then we will map over contacts and turn them into entities. Then return that. So yes, it is very dry. Can I recommend not using the question mark for null, instead use a union type? That is what I usually do. Where am I not using it? Please do tell. the auto-generated one. Yeah, I am much more of a union type person myself. So I get that. I get it. I also agree with you on that one. So let's just close that. We can close this, this, and this. So what we're going to want is a contact entity. So this is going to have a couple of things. So our entity is going to accept or have a few parameters. So let's just go to our contact. And we're going to want the name, email, socials, role, pronouns, birthday. So we're not going to have a string name because what I actually created is this data object over here for a name. And this can actually be moved over to the domain. So what we will do is we will refactor this. We're going to move the class. We're going to go to domains. We're going to go into network. And we're going to go into value objects. So there we go. Let's just go back to here and make sure that is, don't know what, going there. Fix that file. There we go. So that is now casting to that instead. Perfect. So this is going to be a name object. Then we're also going to have a contact, a email. So what we're also going to want here is a value object for email. So we can create a new class here called email object, public function construct. Now we're not going to do the property promotion on this one. Null string email. We have a public read-only null string for the email there. So do a quick check here. So if email is null, then what we want to do is just say that this email is email. Like that. But if we do have an email, then we want to say that if filter var validate email, then we want to set this email to be email. If that fails, we will throw a validation error here. Let's make all of that read only, catch up on the chat. Why have read only properties versus toString? Just, I like read only properties. Just how I like to do things. So then we're going to have over here public email object as email. Then down here, we can just do that public function toString, return this email like that. Down here, we're going to add a quick to do. An exception. Worry about that in a little while. Right, next up, socials. So we're going to have a public array of socials. However, this could be null. It's okay for now. Role is going to be a string, so public null string for the role. Public null string for the pronouns. And birthday is going to be a public null date time immutable or date time interface for the birthday. Simplify that, fix up that, and then we'll just clean that up again. I wonder if there's a setting to stop that stuff happening, because that would be really useful to use. I hate it that it does that. Class stringable. Yeah, I mean, I could use a stringable contract, but I mean, there's a method that just works and it will just allow me to control it a little bit. For example, on here, if we do a public function to string, I can just return this first, followed by this last. And that's how I want to default the name handling for strings. It's first name and last name. You know, if I want to display the middle name, I want to actually manually call it. Or if I want to get the preferred name, I want to manually ask for it. So yeah, there's methods to some of the madness. So what we're going to have is a public static function from Eloquent. Now this is going to return, well, it's going to receive a contact model passed in, and it's going to return a contact entity. Return a new contact entity where the name is contact name. The email is a new email object where the email is contact email. Socials, I'm just going to pass through. Role will pass through. Pronouns will pass through. And birthday will pass through. So there we go. So we've got a way to create it from Eloquent really quickly and easily. We've got an error somewhere. Where is my error? There we go. Fantastic. So if we come back to our service here, what we want to do is that is going to return a collection. So this will also return a collection, but this is going to return a collection of contact entities. So over here, we want to return a this. Then we're going to map over them. Okay, come over to our repository a second. We want to return a collection there as well. There we go, fix that up. That's fixed that up, which is fixed that. Now we can do this. And the callback for this, we're going to get a contact in there, and it's going to return a contact entity. So we can say contact entity from Eloquent, where the contact is contact. There we go. Jobbity jobbed. Hey, Lucas, how are you doing, buddy? Okay, so this can be read-only. Actually, the whole class can be read-only for now. There we go. So we can get all contacts, which is fine for now. What's next? Events. And what we're probably going to want to do is come over to here. We're going to have a directory for events. And we're just going to create a domain event, which again is abstract for now. So there's that, and we can admit a contact created event, for example, which will extend the domain event, where we get a public function construct passed into it, and this is going to have a public contact entity as contact. So this is where we can't strictly do DDD because of the kind of active record implementation, but we can find a blend. So we can make an observer, and we're going to call it the contact observer. And this contact observer all the way over here inside of our app, this is going to get the created from the contact. Not going to return anything, but we're going to inject a dispatcher, public function, construct. We're going to emit the event dispatcher for this one. So private, let's make it read only, dispatcher for events. And we're going to call this events. So we can say this events, contact created, contact. So this event and the event will be for this contact, like so. So what's complaining there? So we'd probably do a contact entity from Eloquent where the contact's contact. So we can kind of bind it back into the domain within this part here, come over to a contact and tell it that it is observed by contact observer. So now when a contact is created, this event should be emitted. And it'll emit a domain event, which is perfect. So we can create listeners to do what we need to from that point. But right now we don't really need it. So let's close all of those, come back down to our domain, and we're going to have aggregates. Now, if we come back to Arc and remember what our aggregate does, it's a cluster of related objects treated as a single unit. So if we create a contact aggregate, this is going to public function construct accept two things into it. This is the contact, and we will have to create the other entity first. So company entity. The biggest problem with going full DDD is that it takes a while to see anything of value, if I'm honest. There's check PHP Storm's code style for spacing. There's an align arguments option. Ooh. Code style. let's come to code style. Where are we looking? Where code style PHP. It's a shame you can't search within here, right? Braces. Align named arguments is off. If statements. Assignment. That was off, but it is being overridden by the editor config. So I wonder if there's something in the editor config that I could possibly do. So star.php. What is it? Arguments, spaces, function. Oh, okay. Let's just get to here. And we want to look for spaces. At the top, function declaration. Function declaration. Okay, maybe it's something that I'll do off screen, so it might take me a little bit too long to go through all of that. So let's just go back to this company here. So company model, let's just have a look. So this is relatively standard. So I'm just going to put this on the screen next to it like this and go through the options. So public bring name. So then we've got a public null string. I'm going to copy that because I'm going to need that for the logo, for the website, for the email. I spelled website wrong, which is typical of me. Then for the industry and the description and null array socials. There we go. So what we can actually do is make it read-only on its own. And have a public static function from Eloquent, which is going to receive a company as company and return a company entity. Fantastic. So return new company entity where the name is company name, logo, website, email, industry, description, socials, like that. So we've got that. So that down here, we can then say private company entity is company. Public function company is going to return its company there. And public function contact, return this contact. And this can be read-only, and we will just format that. How are we looking? Yeah, so there's always a 10 to 15 second delay from what I say to what you hear. Okay, so what we are going to want to do next is in our service here, we're going to want to get a specific kind of contact with their company. So if we say we want to get the aggregate, we're going to get the contact aggregate there. So we can return a new contact aggregate. And then this is going to say that the contact is contact entity from Eloquent, and the company is going to be a company entity from Eloquent. So we need to contact there and company there. So what we need to do up here is get the contact with the related company. However, this could possibly be null because it may not be assigned. So that over here, what we want to do is use the repository to find or fail. And I'm going to extend this. We are also going to be able to say with. So that here, array with is that query with relations is with. So that over here, we can say contact is this repository find. And get this ID passed into the aggregate. So we're going to say that the ID is the ID and the with is the company, like so. So that down here, we can actually say contact. And here we can say contact company. And we are probably going to want to just tag that, give it a little bit of type safety there. And there we go. So all of this sounds great, but does it work? Let's start looking at some tests. So I'm going to create some unit tests. Let's just delete that. And we're going to start with network. And we are going to say, let's start by testing the services. Well, actually, let's just drop all of that. Let's in here just say services. Services, and we're going to say, let's work on the contact service. I'm going to call it test. Right, so public function, let's just put it over here. So we want to see if we can get all of these, all contacts basically. It can get all contacts. Not going to return anything there, but we can mark this as a test. So we will say contacts equals, now we need to probably have a repeatable way to do this. So protected function service contact service, return a new contact service where the repository is a new contact repository. Actually, we don't even need to go that far. We can just resolve the contact service class, I believe. Let me get the eloquent builder. No, it's not. That ain't gonna work. That ain't gonna work at all. So the database is going to be resolve database manager class, and then the query is going to be contact query. Sort those arguments, and there we go. So contacts is this service all. So then we're just going to do actually that's already a collection. So I can just say map over each contact. And what we want to do is say this. Nope, that's not going to work. That's not going to work. Okay, we'll have to do it a different way. Okay, for each as contact this extends, in this case, instance of. Now we are expecting a contact entity. And the actual one is going to be the contact. But for that, we are going to have to say contact factory. Let's create 10 and do it that way. Let's have a look at the test, see what happens. Zoop. Okay. Password reset stuff, not something I want to do. Let's go and just come to this here, and we're just going to delete all of that rubbish. Let's just rerun it. Cool. So let's come to our test case, extends base test case, refresh database. Oh, actually, lazily refresh the database. Going to do it. We may as well do it properly, right? Now let's do that again and see what happens. So, attempted to read property first on array. So I think what is happening there is that our database factory for a contact is having issues. So we can say a new name object. The first is this first name. The middle is first name. That's the last name. And the preferred is username is this faker username. Then we can just delete that. Let's try it again. Table contact has no column named first. This always bloody happens. Always happens when I'm working with this. Okay, so let's open up that namecast. Let's see what is going on. So this, when we're setting it, what we want to do is we want to set the name to be Now, run it again. Case sort argument array must be of type array, string given. What are you doing to me? Wait a minute. Name object. What is going on? So I don't get why this isn't working, because if I go through the docs for casts, so let's just look at casts, eloquent mutation casting, value object casting. So we've got an address which casts attributes. We're getting the attributes there when we get it. Then this. Okay, so let's just do that check as well. So if value instance of name object, if it is not an instance of that, throw a new invalid argument exception with the message value must be an instance of name object. So let's just run the test and see if that gets thrown. Case sort. So where is that even coming from? This is just getting really, really annoying every time I have to do this. Trying to create a new person here. Let's just undo all of that and let's see what happens now. Value must be instance of a name object. So at this point, I need to send through the name as a new name object. And let's set that last name preferred to be this. So at this point, things we should be getting past the next point. Let's just delete that. And we're on to the next problem. God darn it. So where's this case sort even coming from? So we're case sorting the array all the way over here. Insert. So while we're inserting, if it's an array, and we're going to want to case sort, is expecting an array, the input array. So let's go have a look at this. So while we're setting it, let's just have a look at this value there and see what happens. So we are getting that there. So it's expecting an array. So I come back to Arc. What that's doing is just returning an array as is. Custom cast that casts multiple column values into a single address value. Oh, wait a minute. This should be correct. But for some reason, it's not. Let us try and dump on attributes a second and see what we are getting passed back. Nothing in attributes. What do we get on key? Name. So we could swap this to be key quite easily. And we know that the value is going to be this. So that if we do on here, if we have a public function to array, first, middle, last, and third, so that over here, key is going to be value. What happens? We're still getting errors with that case sort. Ooh. Contact entity construct argument 3 socials must be of type nullable array. Bloody 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 blah. Okay, so contact repository, aggregate there. So when we are creating the contact entity from Eloquent, all the way down here, domains, network, entities, contact entity, this is going to be a collection. But we're going to do that just in case. And again, now undefined array key first. Where is that coming from? Array key first. That is coming from handle exception cast name, all the way up here. Okay, so this can actually be value, not attributes. So run that again. And now we are going to hit a cannot access offset type string on string. Okie dokie. So let's just die and dump now on value and see what the devil we're getting. That's because we're trying to cast it to a string. So attributes. So when we cast, oh wait, because we've done that name object to string, it's going to just put it in the database as a string. Cannot be converted to a string. We know. So while it's trying to write it, let's come back, look at our contact database a second. I think I may have. So that's JSON. So what we actually need to do on this name here is JSON encode value of that. And let's just set flags to be JSON throw an error. That'll do. And then this is going to return a string. And simplify that there. So this is a string. Just update that dot block and simplify that. So then this here is going to be something different. So now we're getting that again. Then the value there should be a JSON object. You're returning name as an array. C factory. No, don't use JSON encoders. That will break the code in other places. Cursor to delay. Sometimes I wish Cat could just join me on the streams, right? So in the factory, contact service. No, contact factory here. So we want to pass a name object in. Don't need that for now. I'm not going to worry about that. So if I just JSON decode that as an associative array, and we're going to do some flags. It's probably a nicer way to do some of this. So we've got name there. So we've already got that. So what we can then do is get this and say that the name is that. Simplify that a second. Harden it. Never pick that. Okay, so we can then say name first. That, and that. And then just have a look over here and see what happens. Return value must be of type eloquent collection support collection returned. Okay. So service all is going to return a different collection. And that is fine. Now let's see what happens. And now we're okay. We are okay. We're getting there. We are getting there. So we know that we can get all contacts. Next up, we're going to say public function. And the next thing we want to test maybe is, can we get the aggregate based on its ID? So it can get the aggregate. I'll say void test. So our contact is going to be contact factory create. Then this assert instance of expected contact aggregate class actual this service aggregate where the ID is the contact ID. Kind of pointless there, I think. It could probably be skipped. What we also want to do is say this assert. We don't really need to do that. Let's just make sure that from eloquent argument one company must be of type app models. Company null given. So over here, we're also going to want to create a company. So we can say company factory. Or we can actually move that within there, delete that. And now where are we? Construct argument socials must be of type array. So company entity to array, which means I can delete that and just do that. And there we go. We have some tests. Assert all instances of. That is quite an interesting one. I've not seen that one before, to be honest. So this company over here, Socials, that's collection, that's fine. Company entity, that's cool. Just get rid of some of these. What else is there? Want to get all. We want to get the aggregate. And what we're also maybe going to want to do is public function. Let's say we want to create a new based on the contact entity. And I don't know what we'll return yet, but this repository create contact. Return void. Contact. Or, sorry, entity is going to be contact. So we should be able to create a contact as well. Public function, it can create a new contact. And at the minute, this is very basic domain logic. It's not really doing much. So it's something that we have to kind of build up slowly over time. And yeah, it might be messy. Want a shorter map syntax? Of course I do. I love shorter map syntaxes. Okay, so it can create a new contact. So we are going to this assert count. No, assert equals the expected is 0 and the actual is going to be, we're just going to do a quick query here. Assert equals expected to be 0. There we go. So pick that up. And then what we can do is say this service create where the contact is a new contact entity. So the name is going to be a new name object. Where the first is test, middle test, last is test, preferred test. The email is going to be test at, I'm going to say treble.com. The role is going to be developer advocate. The pronouns, I'm going to say he, him. Let's make it me. So I am Steve, or actually, if you want to be specific, Stephen and Ruby. Can't spell my own bloody name. McDougal, and preferred name is Steve. Birthday, date, time, immutable. And the date, time, the time is going to be 09/09/1998. And the socials is going to be an array of Twitter. Just probably grab that and then say GitHub, YouTube, and that is it. So let's just come here and let's just sort those. Boop. So we're going to Steve at treble as well. Well, that needs to be an email object. So new email object where the email is that. There we go. Service create, blah, blah, blah. And then we're going to say that, okay, we expect one to have been created. Contacts entity to array. So let's have a look. Oh, okay. So map Ooh, I did not know we could do that. That is really cool. So map should be able to just do that, is what Kat is saying. So let's have a look. Map from Eloquent, static function. Actually, maybe I'll have a look into that before actually just blindly doing it. So what I want to do is all of these entities need to have a toArray method. So down in our infrastructure, we're going to come to here and we're going to say entities, and we're going to create a new PHP class for domain entity. And this is going to be abstract. And we're going to do a public function toArray, which should return an array. Let's just close all of those. And now our contact entity needs to extend domain entity. So we need to have a public function toArray. So down here, return, have a name, email, socials, role, pronouns, and birthday. Contact, socials, cast as collection. I'm not going to worry about that right now. Right, okay, so now test. Oh, let's have a look. What's we complaining about? Okay, integrity constraint, not null constraint, failed for user ID, insert into contacts. So when we create a contact, we also have to understand what user it is going to be. So if we come down to this repositories for the create method, this is going to have some form of null array override like that. So what this is going to have to do here is an array merge like that. So this repository interface for create is going to have an array for the override like so. So that on the contact repository, that should be fine, but on the service, contact service here, when we create override, we want to get the user passed in as well. So we can then say that the user ID is the user that we are passed. So we want to create a contact for any user. That is the purpose of this service. So then down here, we're going to say create. Let's just say that user equals user factory create. Like that. Then all the way down here, we're going to want to say user is user ID. Now test it. Next error. Okay, so argument 1, email must be of type string here. New contact entity, email object given. From Eloquent. So what's going on here? Contact entity. Going to get that. is coming from Eloquent. Contact. So this is likely getting a string at this point. So let's just try and dump on contact email a second. See what we're getting. We're getting an email address as a string. And what happens if we do that? We are getting an email object. That's fine. I'm struggling to see what's going wrong here. I think it's somewhere that I'm not looking right now. So the complaint is type error. Email object construct. Argument 1 must be of type ? String. So what happens if I just do this? Am I casting it elsewhere? Contact entity argument 2 must be of value object email string called. So that is correct. So when we're getting the contact from what could possibly be going? In the repository interface, create method, couldn't you pass a domain entity instead of an object? Now, yes, I could. That is a very good call. Maybe in the email object, you miss the constructor param. Email. So that's going to set it by default there. Casting to a string. Trying to figure out what the devil is going on here. So when we create it here, I'm going to get that entity to array. So let's just have a look at this entity to array. I think it could be on this. This email is coming through like that, and then that. What happens if I just manually do that up here outside of a transaction, and let's just see what it does. That is where the error is occurring. So email object construct argument blah 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 blah. So a make cast email cast. Okay, let's just delete that and create it as an email. Like that. So this is going to get something different passed in. So down in our contracts here, this is going to be JSON. So we want to store the object itself, maybe. This is a problem with doing it this way sometimes. So on this email here, when we get it from the database, we are going to be getting a JSON value. So we can say email is going to be JSON decode, where the JSON is the value, associative true, and the flags is going to be that. So then what we want to return is a new email object where the email is email. Like that, and that is going to return an email object. Then this is going to return a string, so we want to JSON encode where the value is value. So now let's just run the test again. And where are we? Contact entity. So it must be of type question mark string, blah, 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 blah. What am I missing? I'm missing something somewhere. Repository. This create. So let's just quickly, this can be a domain entity. Over here, we can say that that's a domain entity. This is a domain entity. And that's all I care about for that. And down here, we can just update some of this quickly. And that's it. Okay, so let's just do a quick dime dump on entity. We've got this entity here, we've got an email, and we're pretty happy with that. What happens when we cast that to an array? This comes back as that. So over here on our casts, wherever they are, have I actually done any? I have not done any casts. This I have. Here they are. So email is actually going to be an email class. All the way up here, we can then swap this to be a null. Well, actually, it can be just an email. Like that. Let's just compose the autoloader and compose the test. So we are good up to that point. So now what happens here? Email object construct argument 1 email must be of type that string. So what is going on? Contact. Now we can just say contact email. And now we're getting it. Fantastic. We got there in the end. This is for me that die dump. And make sure our tests are passing. Oh, wow, that took a while, right? That took longer than it should have done. So that's the creation part done. Let's just close off some of these. So next up, we've done create. So that's that part done. Let's say maybe we want to do an update. So public function update. We're going to receive a contact entity and bring as the ID, return void. And then we're going to say this repository update, the ID is the ID and the entity is the entity. Just swap those around. Well, that should be contact. So let's just quickly test that. Public function. It can update a contact. Test. So our contact is going to be contact factory create. And we're going to override maybe the role. We'll override the role. So the role is going to be developer advocate. Now we can do a quick update. The ID is that, and the contact is contact entity from Eloquent. Let's just say contact. But what we also want to do is, let's say, entity here. I'm going to create the entity outside the loop. That's fine. We'll say entity email role developer or this developer. Perfect. Excellent. This contact is going to be the entity. This assert equals expected is going to be developer, and the actual is going to be contact query first role. Like that. Let's have a look at that. Another one. Object of name object should not be converted to string. Where is that even happening? Where is that happening? Update. Entity to array. So we want to look at that contact entity. We're going to have a to array. This name object. It's complaining that could not be converted to string. So name object couldn't be converted to string. That is coming from repository, transactions, repository. This query where the ID passed in is that. Going to update the entity to an array. So then this comes through as an array. This needs to be as a string. Like that, and that's going to say method toString not implemented. So now public function toString return JSON encode where the value exists to array and the flags is JSON throw error. Let's test that. So where are we falling over this time? Value must be an instance of a name object. Ugh. Hey Junior, how you doing, buddy? So here, at this point, okay, so instead of that, let's just do a quick down and dump on the value. Okay, so this could potentially also be a string already. So if is string value, then what we want to do is just return value straight away. Like that. So this could be a name object or a string. Now do it again. Now what's up? Undefined array key name down here. Okay. let's just quickly dump here on value. So what could this be up here? JSON blob. This part here might be the bit that's causing the problem, because we're casting to the database, but we're also casting to objects. Yeah. Oh my God. So many hoops to jump through. So that's the namey part. We can update a contact. That part now we know works. We know that our service is all up to date and working. So let's just do a quick delete check, public function, delete. And this is going to come over to our repository, and our repository for the delete just needs an identifier. So string ID, I'm not going to return anything there either. And then this is going to say this repository delete. The ID is ID. So let's just do a quick test to make sure that already works. So public function, it can delete contact. Test. Then we are again going to do a count check like this. This should be 1. Let's start like this. Contact is that. This service delete where the ID is contact ID. Then we're going to make sure that the count has gone down to 0. And we're good. So 5 tests, 16 assertions. We know that we can do basic CRUD. Delete, update, create, find, and all. Did we do a find? Delete, update, create, all. We haven't done a find, but we have got on like an aggregate based on a string, so we don't need to worry about the find because that's going to do it there. Yes, we know what we're on about. So let's come to our test quickly and make sure we are doing that. You can delete a contact, update a contact. It can create a new contact, and it can get the aggregate. So the aggregate is going to be there. This is an instance of. I'm just going to say contact there, actually. And so once we've got the aggregate, we want to get the contact. Object instance, not that. Contact entity. So yes, that's still going to underline, but we're making sure that we can get into it. Okay. So far, so good. So what's going to happen is once we've authenticated, we're going to come over to HTTP over here into our controllers, and we're going to want to say something like contacts. We're going to want to get all. So we're going to create a controller now. So index controller. So this index controller is going to have an invoke method where we get that request. And we're going to want to get all contacts for the authenticated user. Something like this. So inside API, let's create our contacts.php. Declare some script types, and we're going to use that. And then we're going to have a root get based off of slash. And we're going to say name is index. We are going to use app, HTTP, controllers, contacts. So down here, we are going to have contacts, index controller. Over here, we are going to want to have a root middleware auth sanctum, drop that get there, and we're going to want to group. So we're going to have a static function here. We're going to want to prefix contacts as contacts group based off of the base path, where the path is groups API contacts.php. Let's just make sure that is displaying. So contacts index, go to the function construct. Let's get the private read-only auth manager as auth. Now we could inject a service here, but I don't want to inject the service there. What I want to do is build the service. So our service is a new contact service like that. This accepts the repository as a new contact repository like that. This will expect a query, so we can say contact query where, and the database we are going to inject using resolve database manager. That's like that. So that seems a little bit excessive, right? That's first live stream. Well, welcome. Ask any questions that you might already have. If you don't have any, then I will crack back on. I am just having implemented part of a domain logic. Now I'm pulling it out to the application where I want to basically refactor this service creation here. Now, this gets a repository, which is this over here. So this, I want to be able to set to null. So it could be null at this point, right? So I want to be able to reset the query. So let's say that public function query could come through as a builder, and it's going to return a repository. So this is something that's potentially chainable. So then we can say this query is the builder I've passed in, and return this. So that in this part here, then what we can do is private contact service as service. This part here. I don't want that to be read only, or do I? No, I do. It's fine. So then this service we've already got. What we can do is say that the service is going to be this service. We want to be able to access the repository at some point. Maybe public function. We're going to just kind of proxy it through. So down here we can say this repository query build with builder and return this. There you go, just proxy that through to what's underneath. Query builder is going to be contact query where. So we want to basically amend the service in advance. So what we can then say is contacts equals, then say all. So what we want to do is where the column user ID operator is that, and the value is this auth ID. So at this point, we've got all of our contacts. Let's just come here and just fix all that up. So we've got our contacts, and then what we want to do is just return a new JSON response for now. The data is contacts. That's it. It's going to return a response like that. Yeah, all of these videos are going to be on the YouTube channel, so I wouldn't worry. Let me YouTube me. All of it will be on here. For those not watching on YouTube, you can find the video recording over here. Shouldn't be an issue. You should be able to find that with zero problems. So this bit here, we're injecting the contact service, but we're going to override the query because we don't always need that repository to be as vague. It's going to get a builder injected. Like we could make the repository not read-only so that it could be overwritten, but I think chaining methods like this provides a little bit of a better approach, personally. Now, we want to be able to log in. I am going to test logging in. What happens if I do that? CSRF token mismatch. So because I'm using Sanctum by default, I have got this get Sanctum cookie. So what I need to do is actually just go ahead and get that cookie. So new request. We're going to go to the URL. Sanctum cookie. We're going to accept application JSON. And then if we send that, we should have this here. Maybe as, can I just kind of grab that as a cookie maybe? Got to be a way to be able to do this, right? So now if I send that as a cookie, no, 419. Does that need to go over as a cookie or as a header? I believe I should be adding something like X cross-site request forgery token, and then passing in the value over here as this. Let's test it. No content. Oh, wrong one. Let's just delete that and come back to here and say X cross-site request forgery token is that. Send it again. Okay. I don't think you can actually authenticate like this. Authentication, basic and bearer, no. So what I need to do is set up some API auth, basically. And what I'm going to do for that is, because to recap based on yesterday's stream, is this is going to be an API that a raycast extension, a CLI tool, and a web app are all going to interact with. So what I need to do is a way to authenticate easily. Now, if I come down to the database migrations, you'll see that I got the personal access token. What I can do with this is set the UL ID to be an ID and then primary. Perfect. All of that is perfect. And what I'm going to want to do is basically override the model for this. So I'm going to create a new personal access token model. This is going to extend the personal access token there. And I'm going to import that as an alias, as a sanctum token. And then we're going to say like this, use has ULIDs. Then in my providers, what I need to be able to do is say sanctum and personal access token model, use personal access token model as personal access token, this one. Like this. So like that, then I'm going to want the middleware. So make middleware device identifier. I personally like doing it this way. Every device that comes through should identify itself because it's an API and I want to know who's connecting. If request has header X device ID. So if we don't have a device ID, we want to basically just throw an exception. So throw new invalid. Well, actually, we could probably do a bad request exception like that. Message is going to be you need to send the X device ID header. That in theory should do what I want it to do. Bootstrap app middleware. We want to alias the device as device identifier class, like that. You should probably just prepend it onto the API. Prepend device identifier. Pixel file like that. And if I come here, that's probably going to complain or do something, or I don't know what. So let's close that. Let's go back and check. Still got the cross-site request forgery mismatch. There's a way that you can I think the internet's being slow. Is URL encoded? You have to decode it first. Ooh, okay. So this bit is, I'll send that empty body. Headers. So this bit. So if I just quickly Tinker, I think that's the method. Let's just tinker well. Let's just tinker well instead of tinker because it's got type completion and I can never remember things. Let's make sure it's active. It is. So URL decode that. So then on Yakadoodles, I can come over to the headers and send that, and it's still complaining. Log arc, cross-site excluding URLs with middleware. Let's just say accept for now. And I will think about that a little bit later. So now if I just come to here, getting an email field is required. So that on the body, we want to set a JSON, probably remove that. Cool. So we want to log in using the email, just stevemcgee@gmail.com, and the password of password. No content. What headers is it giving me? Credentials. It's giving me a cookie, basically. Environment, manage environment. How can I do cookies? Cookie. Aha, cookie. New cookie jar. And API. So manage cookies. Cookies will appear as a cookie header. Okay, so manage cookies. We've got it. We've got a session. So now we want a new URL to contacts. 404 bad request. Headers. Let's make sure we are accepting application JSON. This is coming from the device identifier. So we need to set the X device ID as, I'm just going to say, my API test unauthenticated. Cookies. How do I, is this going to set the cookie? We want to, how do I set the cookie on this request? Manage cookies, CRM, headers, auth, no, body. How do I set the cookie on it? Got to be a way to set the cookie. I'm not 100% sure. So the other option is to go through and say, if we go to like auth login, it's going to do a 404 not found. So we could potentially also have a login controller here, which public function invoke. That is going to get the same login request as the other one. We can then say authenticate. And then what we're going to want to do is say that our token, we're just going to do it all in line for now. Query where the, actually, we could probably just get the auth user create token. You're going to get the access token there. Instead of that, the name is going to be request get the header for X device ID. Then return a new JSON response where the data is token like that. And we're going to get a plain text token from it. That's all it needs to do there. This is going to return a response. This we'll refactor later, but let's come down to here and let's add that root inside API quickly. We're going to want to have a root prefix auth as auth. We're going to group base path, where the path is roots API auth.php. So we've got cookie auth, and then we're going to have non-cookie auth. So let's just do this. Root post login use app app HTTP controllers auth. So we could say auth login name login. Come back and auth login bad request. So why are we complaining? Something that I've done. Bad request, bad request. Accept, and we're sending the content. This is coming from routing. Let's come over to here and let's come out of that. A root list. We are going to have an auth login as well as a normal login. So that's going to go over to that login controller. It's going to do this email password, rate limiting, lockout, throttle key. That shouldn't be causing an issue. So auth login is dying for some reason. Can anyone spot set? I thought I did that. Device ID as my API. It was on a different route. There we go. Ooh. Invalid text representation, big int, query exception, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so this personal access token, when it's being created, down here, we've got has UL IDs. We come back to our database migrations. This. So we're going to migration seed, come back, send the request, and we haven't got a token. Oh, come on. What's going on today? It's just not my day, is it? What happens if I just pass back the token? We're getting the access token. We don't want that. We want the plain text token there. And let's come back and send that request. Now we've got a token so that what I can do is authenticate here, auth, bearer token is that, send it, and there we go. Right. Come back to my PHP Storm, open up the database seeder. This is a user. And what I'm going to want to do is say contact factory. We're going to create for this user as an owner. We're going to create 10. So let's just resend that. Come over to here. Relog in. Going to grab all of that. Come to this. Drop it in, send it, and I've got some. And that is just returning objects in a nice way. That's basically the, I come to the contact controller over here. If I just do a die and dump on contacts, we should get this support collection, and within there we're going to have domain contact entities. So we can actually pass that through to a resource. So make a resource contact resource. If I just come back here a second, what I actually want is when we get all of them to return each one as an aggregate. So on our service, resources, no, domain, network, service, here. We want to get all of them. We want to map over each one, and that's just going to do multiple queries. We'll figure that out next time, I think. For now, we're just going to go and look at resource for contact. So this is going to get a read-only contact entity as the resource. Move that to this. And then what we want to do is this contact entity, I guess it's going to want to have a public null string ID on it somewhere. It's going to want to be identified somehow so that when we get it from Eloquent, we can set the ID to it. That shouldn't have the ID on it. So that over here, we should be able to say ID is this resource ID, name is name, email, resource email is email, birthday. This is going to get passed through to a new date resource, where the resource is that. Let's go make a new date resource, which is a bit more global, and that will get passed in. Anything else that we want to pass through right now? I suppose we could pass through socials as this resource, socials, the role as this resource role. We're just going to stick to that for now. Come over this date resource. This is going to get this birthday is actually a date time interface. So we're going to get a date time interface. Simplify that as a resource. Delete that line. Do some of this. And what we can do is, let's say human, and we can say this resource, and then we can like diff and format and do lots of different things on it. So let's check on chat. Okay, so I know Carbon has a way that I can do it. So I can say I could Carbon pass by the time to this resource. And then over here, I can say date diff for humans. I can then say as a string, I want to say date to date time string. We can then set the local time to be date to date time local string, and we can just get like the timestamp as well. So date timestamp like that. So then if we make that request one more time, we are getting it slightly differently. Okay, so now we just need to convert it over. We're doing that. Then on the index controller, we want to send a contact resource collection, and the resource is going to be the contacts. So come back and send that request, and there we go. Birthday, 34 years ago, string, blah, blah, timestamp, role. So we got lots of information. We got contacts. We haven't got companies yet, but we'll worry about that in a little while. I think, that's 2 hours worth of streaming. I think that's probably enough for now. So I'm going to push all of this up to Git. So Git status, we're going to say, ooh, not that. Git add, Git commit, started our DND BDD refactor. Let's just Git push that. So that should be under .com, just speaking DevRel CRM. I believe this is it. Yes, so let me drop this in the chat. You can go and clone this repo, view this repo, do stuff with this repo, whatever you need. I'll accept PRs, drop something if you want to. It is public. It's got all of our code in there. So go have a play. Until next time, probably tomorrow or Thursday, let me know what you think. If you like the video, drop a like. If you've got any feedback, drop a comment. If you're on Twitch, subscribe. If you're on YouTube, follow, subscribe. The usual stuff that YouTubers say. Other than that, have a great rest of your day. I'm going to go have a coffee. Catch you all later, and we'll pick this up next time.